Okay, this is the Economics Review, page 1. All right, so when we're talking about economics, we're going to be looking at trade, commerce, technology across time, the impact of capitalist development, labor unions, and consumerism. Okay, and part of this packet we have not gotten to yet, but I'm going to go ahead and cover it with you today. All right, so let's begin with colonial America and talk about how each of the regions developed differently economically, which really is the root of why later on we have a civil war. All right, so New England. Anybody tell me some of the things New England did economics-wise? Sarah? Shipbuilding, good. Anything else, Kyle?
Fishing.
Fishing. Did they farm? They did, but what kind of farming did they do? Subsistence farming, which is just farming for the survival of their family. They may have traded and bartered some of the stuff they grew on their farm, but it's not really the thing that's making a ton of money for the region. They are also involved in lumber, because they got lots of trees. Commerce, okay, which is why they're going to be impacted to a greater degree by a lot of the rules that England starts to make. And rum and the slave trade. They are part of that triangular trade between New England, Africa, West Indies, back up to New England. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So even though they didn't have a high demand for slaves in New England, was slavery legal there? Yes, at this time. And they're responsible for a big part of the slave trade. All right, the middle colonies. What did they do economically? Matt? Yes, they were known as the breadbasket colonies. So they did have large farms. A lot of wheat was grown. Okay. What else did they do? Was it only farming? No, they probably had the most diverse economy. What else did they do? Mm-hmm.
The fur trade.
Okay, fur trade, shipbuilding, commerce again. They have a lot of the large port cities, New York City, Philadelphia. All right, now on to the poor Chesapeake, Virginia, Maryland. What did they do? Tobacco, pretty much exclusively, and that was cash crops. So they have huge plantations. And we'll look at this, we'll make connections back to the stuff when we talk about the demographics and the settlement patterns of these colonies, okay? Southern colonies then. What are they doing economically? They're farming cash crops as well, but they have a little bit more diversity when it comes to what they grow. What do they grow other than tobacco? Sugar, no cotton yet. Indigo, rice, and don't forget, South Carolina in particular did pretty well in a slave trade, actually trading Native Americans into slavery down in the West Indies. Okay? All right, so all from the get-go, the colonies are developing different economies, which is going to lead to them needing different things economically, so that when they unite under one government, that's going to be a challenge. Okay? All right, now, key terms when it comes to Britain and America and their relationship economically at this time period. Again, we already went over this once. Mercantilism. What is mercantilism again? Doesn't hurt to just drive it in. Gage? Did I put that on my thing? Oh, you already wrote it? Okay. Yeah. Colonies are providing raw materials and a place for the mother country to sell manufactured goods. The colonies exist for the benefit of the mother country. Okay? One of the ways they tried to enforce this was through the Navigation Acts, which we already talked about once. But New England really violated a lot of those, and England didn't enforce them very well. Triangular trade. Again, this is primarily New England involved in this. It violated the Navigation Acts, and it was trade that never went through England. So from New England, they would take rum, they'd trade it for slaves in Africa. They'd take the slaves from Africa to the West Indies and get sugar. And then they'd take the sugar back up to begin the process of making rum again. And again, what does salutary neglect mean? Yeah, they're not really enforcing, they're really leaving the colonies alone, so to develop their own economies, their own tax systems, things like that. Tara? Sure. Triangular trade was from New England. There were multiple triangular trade routes. This is just one example. New England would take the rum to Africa in exchange for slaves. They'd take the slaves to the West Indies in exchange for sugar. And then they take that sugar back up to make more rum. And one of the navigation laws is that all imports had to go through England. So they were violating that. Okay.
Catherine Finn, please come to the main office. Catherine Finn, please come to the main office.
All right, the new nation then. All right. One of the first things that had to get dealt with in the new nation was organizing a currency system, paying off debts, establishing good credit so we could get loans from other countries. And so the person who comes up with a plan that deals with all of these problems was Alexander Hamilton. Which position did he hold in the cabinet?
He was Secretary of Treasury.
Secretary of Treasury. Of course you would know that, Michaela. Secretary of Treasury. And which party does he really help to be the creator of and the main leader of, even though he's never president? He's a Federalist. So before we even get into his financial plan, what did he believe as a Federalist when it comes to the national government?
There should be a strong central government.
Strong central government. So every part of his three-part plan deals with an economic problem we had, but it also strengthens the power of the central government. And that's really important to understand. So every part of his economic plan deals with a problem we are facing as a young nation, but also strengthens the central national government. All right? So the first part of that plan was the assumption of debts. Okay? And what was the assumption of debts? Yep.
When the government is going to pay off like all the war debts and everything, including state debts.
Very good. Yes, the government was going to pay off its national debt, and then it would assume the debts of all of the states and take care of paying off that debt. Now, how does this strengthen the federal government? Gage?
It unifies the states with the federal government.
Very good. It ties all the states to the federal government, because now the federal government has assumed your debt is paying back your debt. Why did this anger the Democratic Republicans, the Jeffersonians?
Because they were more for states' rights, but the federal government's taking over their rights.
Very good. They didn't like how it was strengthening the federal government, and some states, like Virginia, had already paid back their debts, and now they are going to be partaking in paying back other states' debts. Okay? So that's why some people were angry about it. All right, the second part of the plan was the National Bank. This was going to oversee the currency, and the national government would be the big investor in this national bank, even though the national bank itself was private.
And which one?
The National Bank. Creation of the National Bank.
Where's that?
Just says national.
Just to say, what's it say?
It says national.
Oh, it's just say National Bank, sorry. I apologize.
He does first 2 points, please.
Yeah, so the National Bank is created to oversee the currency, the money of the federal government, and the federal government was like one of the primary investors in the national bank. Even though the national bank will have a lot of private investors as well.
Receipt, currency, and what?
Currency in the federal government's money. Now, who did the national bank tie to the federal government? The wealthy, who are going to invest their money in this national bank. If the wealthy invest their money in the national bank, they're going to be invested in seeing the national government succeed. Okay? And so it's trying to tie the wealthy to the success of the federal government. And of course, Jeffersonians are going to feel like this is unconstitutional. Why?
I did not sign the Constitution that there could be a national bank.
Very good. This gets at the heart of the strict interpretation versus loose interpretation of the Constitution. And the Jeffersonians, the Democratic Republicans, say it does not say in the Constitution you can create a national bank. And Hamilton is going to argue, yes, it does in the necessary and proper clause, that the government can carry out any other laws that they deem necessary and proper. Right? All right, the last thing is the protective tariff. And you might want to also add there the excise taxes on whiskey and things like that. And the protective tariff is going to be to help manufacturing and raise money for the government. And the excise tax, again, to help pay off the debts. And, of course, that made backcountry farmers who had to pay that tax angry and led to the Whiskey Rebellion. Yeah, the protective tariff was to help protect manufacturing, and the excise tax, and also like raise money to pay off the debt. Okay.